Welcome to the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers podcast channel. My name is Jen Thiessen.
And I'm Kyla Musselman, and we'll be here to guide you through these episodes, which are made possible thanks to Canada Council for the Arts.
The Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers, CGDC, is a national arts service organisation advocating for the rights, interests and protection of stage directors and choreographers and their assistants and associates.
These first episodes are snippets from our Assistant and Associate Program series, featuring industry leaders with insight about the theatre creation process, shared with you with the hopes of enriching our community.
In today's episode, we demystify being a choreographer with legendary director-choreographer Marc Kimelman. Rock and roll, here we go. Okay, so today we are here with the legend himself. You may know him from such podcasts as Tits and Teeth podcast in collaboration with CGDC and this very AAP program, or from his epic dance classes at BDC known as Church or Club K. To know him is to love him. He's a mere snippet of his fierce resume. Marc Kimelman is an award-winning choreographer based in New York City, originally from Toronto. That's right, I said it correctly, Toronto. His recent works include choreographing Rent at the Stratford Shakespeare Festival and directing a chorus line for the Rev Theatre. He has served as an associate choreographer for the Tony-winning Broadway production Jagged Little Pill. He also worked on Broadway's A Bronx Tale and the Tony-nominated Jesus Christ Superstar. Marc's choreography spans Broadway and beyond, including productions like Saturday Night Fever, Billy Elliot, Once on This Island, earning him a Dora Award. His TV and film credits include Disney Plus's World's Best and Degrassi and the Macy's Day Thanksgiving Parade. He's collaborated with artists like Katy Perry, Neil Young, and has directed productions for cruise lines, theme parks, you name it, he has done it. Currently, Marc teaches at BDC Steps on Broadway, and we are stoked to have him with us here today. G'day, Marc Kimelman. How do you feel?
He sounds cool.
Let's be friends with him, shall we? What a legend. Let's get started about choreography, being a choreographer. Marc, you were an associate for Jagged Little Pill on Broadway and A Bronx Tale. Tell us, assistants and associates, in your experience, what's their job? What does it entail? And what value do they add to the process?
Yeah, I started, my first job in that capacity was as an assistant choreographer, and I didn't really know what that was, but somebody asked me to be one, and that was on Jesus Christ Superstar, which started at Stratford, then went to La Jolla, and then ended up on Broadway. And, how I looked at it was just to be there to support what the associate choreographer and choreographer needed. And then I went on to being an associate for other projects. And working in the States, associate was more of a thing that I learned about when I got here. And it wasn't something that in Canada I was used to maybe, 10 years ago. But what I learned through my mentors was that the assistant position was more of an administrative role. So I was really the liaison between the dance captain and the choreography team. So I was almost like dance captain plus, because I wasn't like in the show, but I was helping to document everything. I was always had my computer and my notebook, and I was making sure all the notes and everything were super organized, and I had the admin down. I was watching the process, but I was just like making sure I had the script open to the right page. I was really an assistant, for the choreography department. And that's how I saw it. And I learned to love that part. I was like, oh, it's so exciting to be this organized and to let everyone be free with their creativity. And then when Sergio Trujillo and then CD Larbi-Shirkawi asked me to be associate on their Broadway shows, that's when I started being invited to the pre-production. And I was more on my feet, and I was giving creative input, and I was being asked, what do you think? And I was the one trying it on my body. And that's when I felt like I had more of a voice in the room. And, that was just how I, made the distinction between the two so that when I am able to have an associate and an assistant, just to make sure the choreography team are all in their role, I, set it up that way so that the associate has more of a creative input, the assistant makes sure that we are administratively okay, and then we go from there. Actually, my very, very first role was an SDC observership. And that was when I was not even the assistant choreographer, but I was assistant to the choreographer. And her name was Lynn Taylor Corbett. She actually passed away last week. So I just want to shout her out. She gave me my first opportunity in New York City, working for the New York City Ballet. And we did a production of Seven Deadly Sins starring Patti LuPone. And I knew nothing about being an assistant or being in the room in New York, but I was someone who just went for it. And I remember asking her before, where do you want me in the room? And she's like, just, trust your instincts. So I just started off as assistant to the choreographer, just being in the corner and being an observer and just watching and taking notes, much like you all will. And then, or are doing right now. And then, once the choreographer saw my capabilities, I was then invited to do more. And, it was just by showing this person that I can be helpful, in other ways than just observing. And I was a body in the room. So if you need somebody, call on me. And I let that kind of come to me, which was amazing because by the end of the process, I was the one giving Patti LuPone the notes. I was the one going to her dressing room. I was the one going to Lincoln Center and Juilliard to the costume and lighting departments. And I was just like, what is my life? It was just wild, but I was up for it. I was capable, and I just had to let people see that in me. So there's lots of different ways you can look at assistant versus associate. I think it's, communicating with your team as to where they want you to be and, being respectful to that and showing your capability to do more if called on.
That's so freaking amazing. I love that you were just let people see you, and I guess just ask for what you want is asking the universe for what you want in some way, shape, or form, or putting yourself in the room, I guess.
Yeah. I remember being a kid and I was a child actor, auditioning. And I was so annoying because I was just trying to push myself into the places where I wasn't invited, It was just I was going 200% when I was asked to give 100, And I learned just through maturing that I can learn from any experience, So what, even if I just sometimes biting through a pencil because I know I have the answer, sometimes you just need to observe and let it come to you and then find your moments to give some input. I'll share one kind of embarrassing story, but I was in the Hairspray movie as a dancer, and I knew when I was a dancer that I was meant to be on the other side. I just loved performing only to meet the directors and meet the choreographers and see how they worked. But I remember we were working on a shot that wasn't working. We weren't all fitting in the frame. And we were sitting in this huge ballroom, and I knew exactly how to fix it. And I was just sitting there, and I'm like, don't say anything, don't say anything, don't say anything. I'm hired to be a dancer, don't say anything, don't say anything. There's a team of 5 choreographers. And then finally I said something, and one of the assistants threw his pencil across the room in my direction. And I was just like, oh my God, I can't believe I said something. That was so not my place. Cut to, they do what I said, we all fit in the frame, and we become friends, And it's but it was just this is not your place, but we were struggling, and we needed to hear that. So I just went for it. So sometimes you really just need to go for it, Sometimes I remember being in auditions and just asking one question, even for the purpose of people to see that I have a dance captain brain, I have an assistant brain, I have a choreo brain. It's I'm not just asking something about the move, but maybe about the intention of the move or something that shows that I am able to think deeper. It's how do I show this team that I could be a creative asset, without stepping on toes? It's a tricky line, but I usually say go for it.
Find your moment, he says. We love that. That is, yeah, what a fine line to walk and do it respectfully and carefully and wonderfully. And I love that that worked out for you. Then, what qualities do you look for your assistants and associates?
First and foremost, I try to create a positive atmosphere in my room. I think that really, helps the process for me at least. So I look for a certain maturity, a certain attitude of playfulness, someone who isn't going to say yes to all of my ideas and who isn't going to be sensitive when I say no to theirs. And that's like a really big thing for me because I have a lot of people needing my attention. So I need my associate to be able to, give many suggestions, me sometimes have to be curt with them, but them know that it's not because of them. It's just because I have to get my job done. So, not being sensitive, being able to brush things off and keep going and keep giving suggestions because sometimes what you think might be a bad idea will like spur my creativity to go somewhere else that's helpful. So I look for someone who has ideas, for someone who can work with all types of actors and dancers. I think it's important to be able to understand that you don't give a note the same way to someone who's, trained at the National Ballet to someone who's been an actor their whole life and like know that there's a way to get through to people with respect and decency and still get what we want. I like assistants and associates who show initiative, who allow me to respond first, who know their role and are open to communicating with me, like after a day or two, checking in and saying like, how do you think this is going? Punctuality is a big one. I remember like David Connolly, who was one of my first mentors, as well as Tracy Fly, who I know you all know, saying our job as an actor is to know our lines and show up on time, and that's it. And I think like showing up on time is huge. Just be early. When I am working with a director like right now who like really inspires me, who I'm trying to get it all in, I'm the first one in the room and the last one out. Everything else can wait, but I want to be there for this person and soak up as much as I can get. And sometimes when I show up for this director I'm talking about now, I'll be like half an hour early just to get organized, and I walk in and it's like I'm late. And she's like, oh, Mark, da, 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 da. It's just like, okay, I'm the first one here. I'm getting all the information. It's up to me to sort it out. But I think punctuality is a huge one. Being able to collaborate is a huge one. And the hardest thing, because now often I won't get an associate and an assistant. So earlier when I was giving those different divisions with administrative versus creative, now I'm looking for one person who can do both. And I'm also looking for someone who is good at both. And that's really hard to find, like someone who takes as much care in their creative input as keeping our department organized. And I've always, maybe just because I'm like, was a nerd at school, I just love feeling organized. I love having those dividers. I love walking in with my highlighter and my everything. So for me, ideally, it's someone who can keep us organized, keep me afloat, but also take initiative with creative ideas.
There was so much good stuff in all of that. Oh my gosh. We have a question. Is it common for large scale productions to have both an assistant and associate on the choreo team? And how does that admin work get divided up between them? Can you speak to that at all, Mark?
Yeah, what I've been seeing more lately, if the show is a big dance show, I'm actually seeing two associates often rather than an associate and assistant. And then I don't know how they divvy that up, but sometimes you'll have two associates because maybe there'll be like a huge tap sequence and the choreographer is, needs one person to really focus on that and the other person to deal with something else. And then a lot of the admin can be thrown onto the dance captain because as we know, the dance captain, once the show is open, needs to maintain the show, so they will need all their charts down. So sometimes a good amount of that admin work might be put onto the dance captain if they're open to it. The dance captain's also part of that team, so figuring out how to divvy the work up is an important part of that. When I was on Jagged, we did have an assistant and an associate, two dance captains. I think it depends on the show, depends on the team and the choreographer's needs. I think a lot of it is probably budget. I'll always ask for it. I think as a choreographer, you ask for what you want, and then the producers will tell you what they can afford, really. But ideally, I would love, I love having an associate and an assistant. I remember at Sheridan, I had that once, and it was really helpful and really nice to know exactly our roles.
Essential. Mark, can you talk a little bit about, you mentioned some of your mentors and whether or not you realize that you're a mentor to so many of us in Canada, some of the beautiful brainwaves of Marc Kimelman and how you process and how you choreograph kind of flows through a lot of us. Can you talk about mentorship and why that may or may not be important to you?
Oh yeah, like I'd say like David and Tracy were my first two, and I'd say like David was the first one who just took me under his wing. And I remember thinking like, should I go back to school? Should I go to like choreography, get a choreography degree or whatever, which is amazing. I love school, I love education. And then I just started working with David, and he was my professor, like he taught me everything. He had me in rooms that I never thought I'd be in. We were like at the ROM, our first day working together. I'm like, why am I in a museum right now? And he's like, I need you to recreate this video on a dancer in front of the video. I'm like, down, let's go. And he taught me that I could be a creative asset in so many different capacities. He had me like working with him on fashion cares and like big industrials and lots of rooms I didn't see myself. I didn't know what to do, and I just like, I followed his lead. He's like, here's your headset. I'm like, why do I need a headset? Let's go. And it was just like one of those relationships I had that just taught me so much in a year. That was amazing. And then, Tracy was someone who I just knew I wanted to work with. So I bugged her every couple months. And I was just like, I forget what I was saying on email, but she was the one. I knew I needed to get in a room with her. And then I think it took a few years, and then finally I did. And she's such an incredible mentor, and she has passed on to me like how important it is to pass it on to other people, especially, growing up in Canada where I wasn't as aware of what else was out there. Like we're global. We can be global. Like I was sent to Australia 2 years ago. I was sent to all these different places, but it's up to mentors to realize that the world is bigger than we think, and you can come to New York, you can go to London, you can go anywhere and bring what you have to the table, and that's enough. We don't have to be scared of it. So Tracy was someone who, brought me onto the We Will Rock You national tour, and I was her assistant when there was an associate above me who knew the show and I didn't. So I totally understood where I was meant to be in that, and that was a great experience. But she had me on my first North American tour when I was living in Canada, and I was like, oh, I'm in the States, it's all the same. Like I'm just as good, like it's not scary, like I'm doing what I do. I'm an asset here. And she was someone who really showed me that and built up my confidence. One of the beautiful things is passing it on, sharing what we have, or getting in the room with people who are like excited, like sometimes you forget, like, oh wow, we're here, we're doing this, it's a cool thing we're doing, and sometimes your choreographers like just need that energy again of people who are like hungry and starting and thriving, and everything is ahead of them and we don't even know what we're capable of. That's a really like fun place to be where you're at right now.
Oh, that's awesome. It's so exciting. Mark, we got to dive in to choreography, conception, your creative process from start to finish. And I know there's so much to unpack there, but just when you first get a project that you're excited on, what is the first couple of steps that you do?
Music is always my way in, like I'm always listening to music. So the first thing I'll do is, I'll get a script, or a draft of a script, and then I'll just listen to music and see if I can like imagine something. I like to improvise and freestyle to music, and I'll often record myself doing it because there's nothing like the first time you dance to something. So I'll just, put my phone there, put the music on, and just vibe it out, and then I'll rewatch it. And sometimes there's nothing, and sometimes there's three things. And then another key to improvising to the music is dancing to different components of the music. So I'll try to connect to the vocal a whole time through. And then I'll connect just to the percussion, just to the bass line, just to the guitar, get myself moving in totally different ways to the same piece of music. And sometimes there's like a key, sometimes there's like something that stands out or a motif or something. So it's usually the music first, and I love text. I'm just like a nerd for text. I love story, I love words. Sometimes there's like one phrase that will just be the thing, and I'll write that on the front of my script. And every day, like the front page of all my scripts are just jumbles of words, but they're the words that have stood out to me that I can go back to when I'm stuck and just be like, oh yeah, that idea, think about that, and go with that. So before I even talk to the director, I like to just have some time with myself and the material, just to see if I connect. Can I find my way in? And sometimes I don't know how to find my way in. And then it's talking to the director and asking those questions and hearing their vision of it, which is like so exciting, because I've directed and choreographed like twice, and it's fun, but I love collaborating. I love when someone challenges me. I love when someone says, that doesn't work, try something else. And I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's do it. And then I'm so grateful, because then I'll watch the show in the end and be like, thank God I didn't do my first idea, you know? So I'm a big collaborator. So then I'll talk to the director and have like in-depth discussions about, you know, their vision, their take, see if I can like get on board with it. And then I'll go back to the drawing board, and then I'll like come up with stuff again. I like to work alone before I get in a room with people, and then I'll open it up. Then I'll do pre-pro and invite, you know, 3 friends who are dancers, or, you know, people who've reached out to me recently or come to class that are exciting that I want to get to know. And we get in a room, and I'll do some pre-production and just try to come up with some phrases of choreography, or just try some ideas, see how it looks on people. And then we go from there. I walk into the rehearsal room like 80% prepared, and, you know, leave myself open to the moment, really.
What's so inspiring about watching you in that part of the process is the openness, and it's a willingness to let stuff go as well. You will come in with like a really exciting idea, and then exactly what you said, you're like, oh, that didn't work. Great. Let's try something new, or let's grab something from somebody in the room. And it's just so exciting to watch you piece something together, and then often to see later on what it becomes is wild and awesome. Can you tell us just a little bit more about collaborating with directors as you get further into the process? So you've had those initial conversations, those initial ideas. Now you are choreographing a large scale musical, and you're somewhere in that process. What are those conversations like with the director along the way?
I remember with Billy Elliot, I choreographed Billy Elliot at Goodspeed, and I had an amazing director, Gabe Barry, and the big numbers were great, the small numbers were really cool, and then the hardest thing for me was tracking Billy. And Billy's in like 5 big dance sections. And I sat down with my director, and I remember being like, what am I missing? Like, there's something about his journey, like, why aren't I feeling what I want to feel, you know? So we broke it down, and the directors have the answer, you know, like they usually have the answer. And I remember we broke it down to 1 word each section. I forget what our words were right now, but the first section was this word, and I just focused on that 1 word, you know? And then we went through, and then he has this huge, you know, epiphany moment at the end, and that was all the words put together. And I was like, oh shit, okay, I know where I'm going now. I know where I need to finish. So then I can really be specific with knowing what the 2 and the 3 are, so that we get to this like 5 at the end. And that was great. Like, I love, like, at the beginning, sometimes I'm just coming up with vocabulary and steps that I think make sense for that time period, those characters, the mood, what I'm trying to say, how stylized I want to get versus realistic. But then it's talking to the director about the character journey and making sure that this makes sense for the principal characters that we're really relying on. So I'd never stop talking to the director. And I think the answer is always like, say yes. Like even if you don't want to scrap the idea for now, know that you have it and just like put it away, start from the beginning and do something totally new. And probably 70% of the time you'll go back to the first one, but you had to learn something by doing it many different ways. It's like, and maybe you'll do it later. I remember doing Company for Gary Griffin, and it was my first Sondheim show, and I did the whole opening number. And he called me, saw a video because he was working at Stratford, and he called me that night and he's like, so we're starting again. And I was like, I remember like putting mute on my phone, taking a deep breath. I was just like turned off mute. I was like, okay, what are we doing? And I just like, I got through my emotional moment. I listened to what he said, and I went in the next room and I just like held the room and I said that we did great work yesterday. We're starting again. And we didn't, and they were all so disappointed because they loved that first version, but it was just like, wasn't what he wanted. And I couldn't take it personally. I couldn't be sensitive about it. And then I learned about Sondheim in hearing my director's history with it and how he sees it, and not how my first instinct is to hearing the song, but like he wanted certain vocal sections to like stand out. And that could only help through the movement of it. Yes, maybe I wish I knew that earlier, but his way was to see it and respond to it. A lot of directors work that way. They don't always, if they're just directors and not director choreographers, they don't know dance maybe as well as we do, and they need to see something, which takes time from us, and then respond to it. And that's just the process. So really hearing your director out, not being married to anything, being able to like brush something off that you've worked so hard on, is a skill. And it only makes you stronger to be able to like see something from a different angle. I remember reading that in like one of Twyla Tharp's books.
There are so many brilliant, wonderful things in there. You spoke about vocabulary, like just finding the spine of a story. And when a director, a choreographer, and the actors are all on the same page for that, I think Jen Waldman talks about this in all of her brilliance, just that's where the magic happens. It's so, so exciting, and words are so important. Can you talk a little bit about talking to actors? You mentioned it earlier, just different actors and collaborating with actors with different skill sets, and how you use your language and are amenable to be able to get the best out of different people, and what kind of skill set that is as a choreographer.
It's a hard thing to explain. I did my BA in psychology, so I do feel like I use that every day. I didn't know this was a career opportunity, really. I thought I'd be a psychologist of some sort, which maybe I am, but I do feel like I love psychology. I think like that is what I love about this job. It's like, what has this character gone through? How do they carry their bodies? What are they thinking? What are they motivated by? What music do they listen to? And how would they move in this situation? So I'm always thinking of it internally. And then, I need to express that to actors from like a really sensitive place. So I am very like sensitive to my actors to see how I can get them to get inside it. And it's different for everyone. I love people. I love talking to people. I like knowing their process, asking questions of the actor of like, okay, here's the steps. Like, what do you think? And then let them respond, with like, oh, this feels really good, but I don't know how to whatever, ... And then I can fill in the ... Learning about them to help me help them. Does that make sense? It's like I need to know the person. I need to understand their approach to working. You get to build a rapport that allows the conversation to be honest. And then I know how to give notes. And sometimes people just need to like talk it out themselves, and all I need to do is be quiet. It's just like, okay, I'm going to just listen. They just need me to hear them. Trying to understand the actor's approach is really helpful. And, I spend a lot of time, especially when I do like a more mover heavy piece of work, giving them prompts for improv. And that tells me a lot about the person. Where they go. Some people are on the ground. Some people are struggling internally. Some people are really free and open. And it's like, oh, okay, I'm seeing there's personalities. and they're just showing me, so, a lot of people don't love improv, but it is really helpful for the choreographer to get a sense of the person, and then I'm more able to have an idea of how to approach them.
There's so much emotional intelligence that goes into all of that kind of push and pull, and I feel like it's something that you do so beautifully, and you're so successful in your approach, but it's because you're amenable to people. You're a people person. It's a very essential skill, I think.
Yeah, yeah, and it doesn't always work, and that's just part of it. Like, I'm not going to get it right all the time, and then I'll have a conversation with the person and see how we can move forward, and I can be a better leader for them.
My friend, we are kind of getting towards the end of our time, so we want to know so many things from you. But do you have any kind of final thoughts for the groups? Can you give us a little bit of advice for budding directors and choreographers?
Be authentic, be genuine. I got Jagged Little Pill on Broadway from reaching out on Instagram to the choreographer because I saw their work and was blown away. And I remember like halfway through the work, just like being forward like this and looking around like, is everyone seeing this? Like, I was so moved by this work. And at intermission, I talked to my friend and was like, how do I write this person? And she was like, just write him online. And so I did, with no agenda, expressed my respect and appreciation for his work. And I think he felt that authentically, and we started a relationship, which ended up leading to, a Broadway gig of like him being curious about me. So I think a big thing is if you feel like you want to show appreciation, do it. Because there's like 90% of people who won't. Be the person who shows up. Be the person who asks for a meeting and follows through and shows up. I had 3 people cancel on me last week. And will I meet them? I don't know. It's like, just follow through. It's there's so many people who just don't have that quality. And you might wake up that day and being like, I don't know if I want to go all the way to the East End or whatever. Do it. Get yourself up and force yourself to do it. So I think there's a lot of people who want to put in that kind of work, hustle, and don't. And just, be the exception. Be the one who's like, okay, I thought about reaching out to this person, so I'm just going to do it. What has it got to lose? I remember doing that as a, youngin, whatever that means, early 20s. And I would write like 20 emails, get 1 response, and that's all it takes. I think live an interesting life beyond this industry. I think go on vacation, have hobbies, read books, have something to talk about. Because you get to these meetings and no one wants to hear your resume. They want to know about you, and you need to have stuff to talk about. So I think it's like, I think interesting artists are interesting people. So have a point of view, create content. That's a big one. Like now all of a sudden I have February free, and that came out of the blue, and it's like, what am I gonna do? It's like, I'll work on like creating something, like I'll push myself, I'll just book studio time, and maybe I'll invite 3 people, not knowing what I'm gonna do, and the night before I'll think about it, or maybe I won't. And I think creating content is a great way to find out what inspires you. And you don't need to have any kind of goal. If it's great, you can send it around. I did that recently, and sometimes I get a great response. Sometimes I get no response. But if anything, it's almost like a diary entry for me in that time. It's like, oh yeah, that's how I was feeling then. I gave myself, I remember there was one year that was pretty quiet. I was like, I'm just going to create something every month, a piece of dance, every month I'm going to do one thing. And I held myself to it, and whether you want to or not, it's nice to kind of show yourself discipline. So I guess like those are my like main takeaways of, the kind of, artist I want to be, but also like the person I want to be. It's like beyond the industry. I think it's like we need to make sure that you are like a settled person inside so that you can really, give your all when these opportunities come up and walk in confidently. Actually, my therapist said to me last month, do you walk like a dancer? And I was like, what do you mean? She's like, when you're walking on the street, how do you walk? And I'm like, "Boo." Like, I was just kind of like, it's cold, my shoulders are up, I'm not really look. She's like, well, try walking like a dancer. I'm like, I have no clue what that means. Okay. So I think about it all the time now. And I'm walking down the street and I'm just like, I elongate my neck, my shoulders are back, my eyes are up. It's like as though I'm in class and I'm like, was told to walk from one side of the room to the other. And it changes my confidence immediately. So I don't know why I'm sharing that, but I just felt like it. But it's like how I am in the world is who we are, you know? So it's not just about what you do in the room. You
Mhm.
know, it's what you do outside of the room that helps you like be that person you want to be in the room.
There's so much good stuff in there, but yeah, I totally agree. How we walk through the world, how we're presenting ourselves to the world, changes how we feel inside, which we don't often realize, or we don't say out loud enough, I
Sure.
guess. Kimmels, do you have that? That was so epic, so wonderful. Do you have any final thoughts before we wrap up here? What a pleasure it has been hearing the inner workings of your brain.
You gotta enjoy your life. You gotta enjoy what you do. You gotta push yourself hard. Take the things that challenge you when you're like, oh, I have no clue how to. I had one, my first agent in the States was like, say yes to everything, and I was terrified. I was working with the New York City Ballet. I was working on the opera. I was working for Vogue. I was like, I don't know how to work in any of these capacities. He's like, you're going. It's tomorrow. You have to be there at 7 a.m. I was like, I'll be there. You know, it's like scare yourself. Take opportunities that you feel you are not capable of. You know, it's the only way to do it. You got to jump in, and if you're scared, pretend you're not. You know, and then your body will follow. So I guess that would be my last little piece of
Do
advice.
the things that scare you. It's even if you're not ready, you probably are ready. So our wonderful Marc Kimelman today said, as an assistant or an associate, be in support of the choreographer. He said the associate has more of a creative input. As an assistant, get that admin down, nerd out on it, be helpful, be in the room, be present. He said, whatever position you are in the room, be respectful and let people see you. Don't be afraid to show who you are. Find your moments to give your input. Don't be sensitive, brush things off and keep going. Be early, and it will allow you to absorb every last detail. Communication and collaboration is key. Dream big in your roles, and knowing your roles is essential. As a choreographer, get inspired by musicality, get inspired by text. Words matter. Marc loves being challenged. Get creative in your process and bloody say yes. Have the ability to lose your ideas and lose your choreography. Be open to those possibilities. It only makes you stronger, and see something from a different angle. Ask questions, hear the response, be authentic, be genuine, show appreciation, and show up. Be the exception. Interesting artists are interesting people. Do things that scare you. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Marc Kimelman.
This podcast was made possible by Canada Council for the Arts and brought to you by the Canadian Guild of Stage Directors and Choreographers. CGDC advocates for the rights, interests, and protection of professional stage directors, choreographers, and their assistants and associates.
To learn more, give them a follow on Insta at official CGDC, or check out their website, cgdcweb.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, give us a review, a like, or a follow. And if you have any questions or queries about today's episode, please shoot us an email over at canadianguilddc@gmail.com. Thanks for helping us build better pathways and being a part of our community.